Hello, friends. I'm Kush Khandelwal, and this is Ageless Athlete. A few years ago, I started asking questions that would not leave me alone. Why do some people keep pushing mentally, physically, spiritually long after others burn out or break down? What does it really mean to age well when you still crave movement, meaning, and mastery? This show is my search for answers. Each week, I talk to elite athletes, everyday adventurers, and pioneering researchers who are stretching the limits of what's possible across age, injury, illness, and self doubt. You will hear hard won lessons, untold stories, and science backed strategies for building a body and mindset that lasts. For those of us joining for the first time, welcome to the show. For the rest, thank you for joining us again. Time is our most valuable asset, and I deeply appreciate you giving me your time today.
Welcome back to the Ageless Athlete Podcast. This is your host, Kush Khandelwal, coming to you from Nuevo Leon, Mexico, at the mountain area of El Patriarchico, where I am spending my winter. Today, we are hearing from Steve McClure, one of the most iconic rock climbers to ever emerge from the UK. I have followed Steve's climbing career with avid interest for years, long before I even picked up his brilliant memoir, Beyond Limits. But this conversation opened my eyes to Steve's world in a whole new way. His homegrown training habits, the unorthodox breakfast choices, sorry, milk, it is chocolate chunks and granola, and a mindset that actually relishes failing on a route because it means getting to try again. Even more interesting is Steve's ability to juggle pushing athletic boundaries with raising a family and squeezing in the occasional late night party, all without losing that infectious enthusiasm for the outdoors. What makes Steve's story so relevant for anyone, climbers or not, is how he views longevity and progression. He is frank that he's never been big on periodized programs or obsessively structured workouts. Yet here he is in his mid 50s, still operating near the cutting edge of the sport after decades of hard climbing. His secret sauce? Balancing training with genuine curiosity, a willingness to adopt and adapt over time, and a refusal to sacrifice the simple joy of each climbing day. If that resonates with you, stay tuned. From remote Greenland big walls to iconic British test pieces like Rainman, Steve's insights underscore that often loving the process is the most important way to keep your passion alive, no matter how life changes around you. Let's jump right in.
I'm in my home, which is in Sheffield, in the sort of centre of the UK. And for breakfast, I had I won't say it's my usual breakfast, but it's a breakfast that I've got into the last couple of months. I really like a mixture of Rice Krispies, granola, with some chopped up chunks of chocolate put in there as well. And no milk. Absolutely no milk. Definitely no milk. Milk gets it all mushy and horrible, but a bit of chocolate chucked in and off you go.
That is an unusual breakfast indeed. But on the flip side, I have been known to partake in a bit of dry cereal for a snack.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes I also wonder, most cereals are normally, they have a good component about nutrition and taste.
Maybe.
And
I just like it.
and yeah, and then maybe, I don't know who came up with this idea of dunking this thing in milk and making it a soggy thing when it can be enjoyed
Yeah.
just by itself.
Yeah, man. I mean, what is that milk thing all about? I mean, the really good thing about enjoying breakfast cereal without milk is that I can have it whenever I want, at any time of the day. And regularly, I'll jump on a train early in the morning to go to work, and I'll have that as my
Brilliant.
breakfast, so it doesn't need any milk. I just eat it out of a little bowl in my bag. It's fine.
Oh, brilliant! Because then you can have a to-go breakfast without the risk of spilling
Absolutely. Or what?
spilling liquids.
Or washing up as well.
What about a beverage that to wash it down with? Are you a tea or coffee
No.
person?
Well, I know, you see, I'm neither. I'm just water only. Yeah. I mean, I think part of my non-reliance on milk and hot drinks comes from a lot of time when I was a kid, out camping, bivvying in caves, on the road, all that sort of stuff. I'd be away hitchhiking around for like weeks, months on end. And it was just tricky to heat up drinks, tricky to get hold of things like milk. There was just no point, really. It was much easier just to have like a handful of dry cereal and a glass of water, and off you go. Your day's set up.
Many of us, when we started out on, let's say, a path of adventure early in our lives, we liked to keep things simple. But then over time, these habits creep up. I need my fancy coffee in the morning. But looks like perhaps one of your secrets has been to not get bogged down by fancy things or unnecessary luxuries as you get older. And I just wonder if that's somehow points to this larger theme of your life and
Well, I mean,
accomplishments, Steve.
you say I'm like avoiding these little luxuries, but then I've got like a bunch of chocolate shoved in my cereal as well. So it's not like I'm avoiding everything.
Selective
Selective.
pursuit of, yeah. Awesome, Steve. For those of us who don't know who you are, Steve, tell us who are you and what do you do?
Wow, now that's a big question. So I'm obviously, like I just pointed out, from Sheffield in the UK. I'm a rock climber. That's my thing. Fairly all round, I would say. I've dabbled in lots of styles, from big walling in Greenland, deep water soloing in Croatia, bouldering in the Peak, trad climbing, sport climbing, bit of competition climbing in the past. You name it. If it's a piece of rock, then I'm psyched for that. All styles, really. Been climbing since I was a kid, a really young kid, actually. Both my parents were into climbing, so I started when I was 2 or 3 years old, really. And most of my life revolves around climbing now. So I climb with my kids. My work is climbing related, and most of my passion is all sort of climbing focused. Just kind of being outside is what it's all about, really.
So brilliant, Steve. And you have been able to travel and have taken advantage of these opportunities to climb and pursue different kinds of climbing all over the world. If there was a location or moment that still takes your breath away when you think about it, what would that be?
Yeah, man, that's a good question, because there's a lot of amazing places. And, like regularly I go to somewhere new and I'm blown away and I'm thinking, wow, I've got to come back to this place. It's completely awesome. But I suppose in answer to that question, there was a trip I made to Greenland probably about 20 years ago now. And that was totally amazing. We were climbing in an area which really had very, very few traffic in the past, and almost nobody had been there. And there was no sign of humans at all, like nothing. There was no rubbish. There was no footprints. There was no airplane vapor trails. There was just nothing. And we spent a month there, and that was really incredible to feel so isolated in such a beautiful place. Just us doing our thing, away from it all. I'm surprised I've not been back, to be honest, because it was really quite awesome.
Wow. We all know you for pushing the boundaries of sport climbing in Britain and beyond. Not as familiar with your exploits with remote climbing areas like Greenland. Just to hang on that for a second, what kind of climbing objectives did you have there? And how did you fare?
Yeah, so we'd seen some people had been there a bunch of years earlier and had seen this massive wall, about 1,000 meters vertical granite, and it got almost no roots on it, and the really big plumb lines completely open to go. So we just turned up, and our objective was to try and free climb this huge wall in the best style that we could. Obviously placing no bolts, ideally placing no pegs, which we didn't place, and just trying to climb every single move on this big wall free. And we spent about 7 or 8 days eventually working our way up this big wall, managed to climb it. It was pretty hard in the end. It was about 513A or 513B, the actual crux pitch. And it was great. It was totally amazing. It was an experience which I'd love to repeat.
So this was an FA that you went after and got it.
Yep.
How did you learn about the place? And one can encounter unexpected things even at one local bouldering areas. Curious, any interesting unexpected events that happened that you may not have planned well for, and where you had to
so the trip to Greenland, it worked incredibly well. There was 8 of us on the team, and I'd say we were very prepared. We'd taken a container load of stuff that had been shipped out before us well in advance, and we literally put everything in, including the kitchen sink, literally. I think the one thing which caught us a little bit by surprise, it was a little bit too many mosquitoes for our like. But we were sorted. We had a really good base camp, and the weather was kind to us. We had enough equipment. No, we were well sorted. I think on the team that were with us, everybody had their skill level, and they all threw their information and they all threw their experience into the pot, and we came away with a faultless trip, I would say.
Who were some of the fellow climbers on this team, and was this like part of a sponsored trip?
No.
Was it you guys just getting out there?
No, it was absolutely not sponsored in any way whatsoever. It was just a bunch of friends. People like Ben Heason, he's a fairly well-known British climber. Rob Murphy, and there was a whole bunch of us. All of us climbing at a reasonable level, all sort of capable of climbing into the 513s. Yeah, it was a pretty top team, to be honest.
It sounds epic, and I guess it's been a couple of decades, but I see your face light up when you talk about that trip. So obviously, it was a special one. Your memoir, Beyond Limits, is one of my favorite climbing books.
No, thank you.
And not just for details about your ascent in the world of climbing, but also your early adventures. So well documented. Beyond Limits. Yeah, again, such a powerful title. How did you come up with that, and what does it mean to you personally in the context of your climbing journey and your life as a whole?
I suppose if I was going to sort of answer that in a really quick way, it would be just simply to say that I exceeded well and truly what I ever thought was my limit in like tons and tons of areas. I mean, you can apply that to like the hardest routes physically and mentally. It's quite easy to sort of apply it to that kind of thing where you go beyond what you thought you could achieve. But really, in terms of pretty much everything in my life, I sort of exceeded where I thought I could go, and came up with that title, which, there is no real limit, is there? You just, you often put a limit on where you think you can go, and maybe that sort of constrains you to some extent. It certainly does with a lot of sports and probably a lot of things in life as well. So don't put the limits on. Allow yourself freedom to go beyond.
Well, great title that evokes this philosophy of yours that I personally and many people find so inspiring, Steve. I read that book many years ago, and one of the parts of the book actually that I found myself relating to a little bit some of your early adventures. And I think your book starts off with you stumbling into climbing in Thailand.
It does indeed. Yeah.
South of Thailand, where the islands are. Well, I also visited Thailand for climbing 20 years ago. I was still new into the sport, and it took my breath away. This paradise, with sun-kissed beaches, clear waters, amazing food. Also has this really good rock climbing to offer. So I know it's been a long time, but are there any lessons from those early travels? Whether it's Thailand or maybe even your trip to other parts of the world, India, for example, that still inform you how you approach climbing and life?
Are there any lessons? I suppose if I we'll try and answer that by considering all the things that I've done. And the lesson I probably got from all those traveling experiences is don't just go climbing. Just probably not really the point of this podcast. But there's a lot of stuff to do, and there's a lot of places to see. There's a lot of people to meet. And if you are open to experiencing everything, then you're going to get a much richer experience. And way back when I was doing some of that traveling around when I was like 22, 23, I wasn't really focused massively on climbing. And that allowed me to see some totally incredible places and meet some amazing people and do some cool stuff that I probably wouldn't do now. Because now, if someone says where we're going to go, it's going to be, we're going to go to that place that's got some rock climbing. And that's it. If it hasn't got climbing, I'm not going. So I should probably learn from my lesson. I mean, to be fair, like my family and my friends, a lot of them are non-climbers. So we do a lot of stuff which is not purely climbing related. And I'm quite sort of pleased and blessed I can experience the full range of stuff that is out there, because it's a big world out there and there's a lot of stuff to do.
I've been thinking a lot about energy, not just in training, but in recovery, in focus, in how we age. So when I came across NutriSense, it hit home. It's a program that pairs a 24/7 glucose biosensor with a dedicated dietitian to help you understand how your body responds to food, stress, sleep, and movement, and then act on the data. I chose it because I wanted something real, not another hack or one size fits all plan, just honest insight into what's actually going on inside me and how to build habits that last. NutriSense has helped over 150,000 people take that step. And if you want to try it, you can get 33% off your first month with code Ageless15 at nutrisense.io. Again, that's nutrisense.io, code Ageless15. You can also find this information on the show notes for this episode.
Well, you're so correct that sometimes we get so obsessed with the idea of climbing that we can be in an otherwise really interesting part of the world. But we will zoom in right to that particular cliff and spend the next 3 weeks there, and then just take a rental car and go right back to the airport and home. My first trip to, I guess, mainland Greece many years ago, to Linadio, and I told my parents that I was going to Greece and I was flying into Athens and I would go there to climb and come back, and my parents were shocked. I mean, they know that I love climbing, but they were shocked that I visited Athens and did not, take even a day to check the highlights. Just following your career over the years, you have gone and climbed in so many places. At the same time, you remain, humble and open to all the other experiences that have come your way. Is that like a natural part of your personality, Steve, where you will go and embrace different things and just go and climb all the hardest routes of that area?
I don't just go and climb all the hardest routes. I think I think for me, the number one thing, sort of the most important thing, is being outside in amongst nature. That really is the key. And if I can tick that box, then I'm usually pretty happy. And it could be walking, it could be camping, it could be mountain biking, it could be all those things, it could be surfing. Just being outside amongst it is where I feel the most comfortable. So it doesn't have to be rock climbing, but that is the thing which I want to do the most, but not always. And if I'm on a trip, I'll often look forward to the rest day, because that's the day that I get to see really where I am. That's the day I get to walk up over the ridges and take in the views, stroll around and just see where I really am. Because a cliff is great, but you walk up to the cliff and then you spend the whole time at the cliff, climbing up the cliff. You don't see what's behind the cliff or off to the side of the cliff or a few cliffs further in the distance. You don't see that. So I really like to see and feel where I am. That's really important.
Well, many of us, as we progress into this climbing journey, this lifestyle, we forget to do that proverbial look over your shoulder at the top of the climb and check out the view.
Yeah.
I know that when I was newer to climbing, or when I go climbing with newer climbers, they are just equally excited about what's around them. And somehow, as we progress through climbing, we get really focused on the task at hand and this little objective of like trying to send a route. We forget that. And how have you been able to maintain that, Stephen? It sounds like that's kind of maybe part of your approach, where you are still focused on performance, but you are able to appreciate all of those other things around the climbing as well, the people, the place, and like you said, the environment.
How do I manage it? I don't know, really. I mean, it's probably something that might come right from the start. I've got 2 kids now, and it's interesting to watch how they're growing up and what they appreciate. And as a parent, I guess you do have quite an influence on, I guess, just what they're like. And it's quite hard to know, because I haven't really got much of a control. I've only got 2 kids, and I'm of 2 kids when I was a youngster as well. And you see what your parents show you. I mean, if with my 2 kids, I've spent my entire time going to shopping malls and going to the cinema and eating out in restaurants, never going to the outside at all, maybe they would have no interest in it. Maybe that would be the same for me. Maybe I would just not have found it. So I got to see a lot of that as I was growing up. That's kind of what we did. Both my parents were really keen in the outdoors. So that just became who I am. And yeah, that's who I am. That's the way it is.
Steve, from what I know, your parents introduced you to climbing quite early in your life, when you were perhaps just a little toddler. And you sound like you took to it, like a duck into water. Has it been also that natural for your family and your kids? Because I do notice that you are immersed in these trips and travels often with your family. So has it been as simple, or have you had to be creative? Because, kids have a mind of their own, and some kids will gladly follow their climbing parents and play on boulder pads while they are trying things. But some kids want other things. I mean, I was growing up and my parents would take me trekking in the Himalayas. Wow, and nice. Back then I kind of protested, but in retrospect, I appreciate that. So yeah, was it easy for you to build that kind of love for the being outside for your kids?
So similar to you, we would just go out, go to some beautiful places, and there was never any sort of real pushback. But I think it's quite important, like you were suggesting, that you have to be aware, and you can't push too hard. You can't go over the top. You've got to be aware that there's some other people's interests here, and they want to have a nice time. And if you go too far, if it's cold, horrible, and they don't want to be there, then ultimately they're going to push back against it in the end. So it's just a matter of being aware of that. And, because I like to do all kinds of things in the outdoors, it's not just a matter of going to a cold, windy cliff and sitting there and trying hard moves over and over again. It could be just out for a bike ride. It could just be out for a stroll. It could be out for a wander. Those kind of things made it so that I think my kids very appreciative of just being in the outdoors. That's really what it's all about for them.
One other thing I notice about your approach to climbing, Steve, is that you seem to relish equally cutting edge climbing, like really hard climbing, also with simply enjoying easy routes. So I think that is something that many climbers forget, that joy of being able to enjoy that movement. How do you approach those days when you are on an easy route and maintain that stoke? And I wonder if that stoke you have somehow also allows you to perform well on harder routes.
So I suppose most climbers probably get into climbing through the sort of the pure enjoyment, where difficulty isn't part of the major game. You're just out there to have a nice time, enjoy the scenery, climb up some rock, enjoy the movement. And then for a lot of climbers, as they progress, difficulty starts to seep in. I mean, you can kind of see it, really. It's an obvious progression. They want to see some progression within their climbing ability. So difficulty starts to become the most important thing. Now, I would say that a lot of climbers, it becomes the most important thing. And then that kind of pure enjoyment starts to diminish, and it's not so crucial. And in fact, if they haven't tried really hard, put in a huge effort, then their day is maybe not so good anymore. And I think that would probably be true of myself. I think I spent a lot of my time, if somebody said, do you want to go climbing? Then I'd be thinking, yeah, we'll go try something really hard. That's what I'd be thinking. If they said, no, I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about going out and doing some 5.9s. I'd be like, oh, what, really? No, I don't want to do that. But then in recent years, because I've been climbing with my kids quite a lot, I've been forced to some extent to go back to those easy routes. And it's been really cool to remind myself that actually that's really what rock climbing is. It's about covering ground, enjoying the moves, enjoying the place. But now I'm in this really, really lovely position where I'm running the two things side by side. So I can spend days with my sort of top climbing buddies, pulling down on small crimps, trying to climb up 5.14s, really going for it. And then the next day, can be go out and do some amazing classic 5.10s in sunshine, nice views, lifting protection, basically doing two what would almost seem as different sports. But they're kind of obviously the same, but the mindset is very different, and what you get out of it is very different. It's good to be doing them both and to remind ourselves rock climbing is many different things.
Yeah. That is kind of true for me as well. And I think this might be one of those silver linings of the aging process.
Maybe.
Where, one comes full circle. And I think one thing you alluded to is that power of community and surrounding oneself with people of different abilities and different stoke levels. It's important to for sure have pushers in your midst, people who inspire us and who can help us try hard. But equally important to maybe have friends, family, maybe kids, the others who also prevent us from forgetting why we started doing what we're doing in the first place. And I think that energy, sounds like you find that energy just as infectious as I do about climbing with people new to the sport.
Oh yeah. I mean, it is. It's amazing to have all angles. I mean, it's interesting what you say about going full circle, how you might come back to the point where you started and how that becomes motivating again, and how maybe the super hard stuff is less motivating. And it's probably not just important, but crucial, because as we get older, the chances are we won't be able to perform at that sort of cutting edge, our own personal cutting edge. And if that becomes frustrating, then we need to be able to move with that and find enjoyment in other areas. I mean, if it's all just about climbing as hard as you can possibly climb, it's going to get frustrating at some point because your body's just not going to handle it. Whereas if you can say, right, I'm just going to spend this week climbing easy climbs and I'm going to love it, then you're onto a winner before your body falls to pieces.
Friends, it means a lot that you're here. I pour a ton of heart into the show. The research, the interviews, the editing. It's all me, trying to share stories that matter. If Ageless Athlete has ever made you feel seen, inspired you, or just kept you company on a long drive, or better, over a run or a bike ride, I would be so grateful if you considered supporting it. Even a small amount helps keep it going, helps keep bringing the show to you for free. You can chip in at buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. Again, buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. You can find the link on the show notes as well. Thank you for listening and for being part of this.
Yes, you seem to be at this really sweet spot where you are appreciating all of these things about being outside. At the same time, you are still climbing at a very, very high level. I want to actually take a little bit of a step back in time, talk about one of your proudest climbs, which you accomplished not too many years ago. So, yeah, you have traveled all over the world, but some of your hardest and most iconic ascents happened close to you, right? So let's talk about Rainman.
Okay.
This route that you accomplished a few years ago. It took you a long time to piece together. So for those of us who don't know about this route, can you describe what Rainman is and what made it for its time, even now, one of the most challenging rock climbs?
Well, so I mean, it's on a cliff called Malham Cove, which is in the north of England. It's a really beautiful place. It's limestone. It's not super steep, but it's definitely quite steep. The holes tend to be small. The footholds tend to be tiny and polished, and the route itself is probably about 30 meters long. It's a complete power endurance route. Starts up a pretty old 8A. It's French grade, obviously. There's a poor rest, then it goes straight into a font 8A boulder problem. And then from there, you then go into about 8C plus worth of climbing, and then another 8A on top of that. So it's pretty intense. There's not really much rest as you go along, but it's absolutely awesome. It's such a good route. And not only is it a really, really good route, it also fits my style pretty well. So once I got involved with this, I knew I was onto something that not only I would really enjoy, but something I would stick with as well. So those two things are quite important. And it did take me a long time. I mean, to be fair, it could have taken me way less time, but there was a few hiccups along the way that sort of stalled progress. But yeah, that's the nature of the beast, isn't it, with climbing?
Yes, you found something that maybe suited you on many levels.
It did.
Well, one is, it did, it wasn't, well, one, it was a bit more, let's say, commute friendly. It was not in Greenland. It was a place that you could visit often, and it suited your core strengths. And I think, yeah, again, when one is trying to push oneself, I think it makes sense to focus on what one's strengths are. And I remember reading about this where you almost had to, you had to refine your approach and you had to do some new things, perhaps dig deeper. Can you talk about your approach to climb this route and some of those key changes perhaps that you made in order to accomplish it?
So, I mean, one of the things that's probably worth pointing out is, so yes, this route did fit me. It motivated me. One of the main things is why I really got stuck in was at the time I've just had my second child. So I was really looking for something that was going to keep me at home to some extent. I wasn't looking to travel. I wasn't looking to be away from home. I was looking to be around. So to find something that would motivate me in that period was really not only important, but it was also a bit of a gift, really. I wasn't looking to try and be away. I wasn't struggling to find something to give me motivation. It was just right there, right in front of my face. So I kind of structured my life around that target. Now, it wasn't like that was all I was doing. There'd be a kind of like 6, 7, 8 week window each year where I would focus on that route. So I'd probably go there like literally every Monday and every Friday for about 8 weeks. And that's kind of all I did. And then obviously once that window was closed because it was too hot, I'd be back to normal, back to doing my other stuff. But that route was a focus for quite a few years. And it took me a long time. It didn't actually take me that long to piece together how to do it. It took me quite a long time to get my head into the approach I needed to have with each coming season. So in the first few seasons, I would kind of turn up, right, okay, here we are, get involved with it. And then I would be getting better and better, getting closer and closer. And then the window would run out. Like, oh, okay, I got pretty close that year. Okay, I'll wait till next year. The next year would come round. Okay, here we are again. And then after a couple of years, it was like, hang on a minute. Can't just turn up and expect that I'm going to do this. It's too hard for that. I need to be prepared. I need to get on the route, like with the right frame of mind and the right level of physicality as well. A bit more power endurance, maybe a bit more finger strength. So that was what I did for a couple of years. Now, towards the end, I got sort of shut down. I think it was one year where I was getting really close, and then a bird built a nest on one of the holes. So it was like, oh, okay, well, bird wins, so I can't do that. So that was out. There was a few little spanners in the works. I got really close. I think it was the next year after that, and I snapped a hold off. And it was like non-repairable. So I had to change my sequence slightly. But to be honest, with all these hiccups that came along, I was kind of really enjoying the process. I always didn't want to do it to some extent. It became part of me. It became what I was working towards. It was part of my psyche. Obviously, I did want to do it, but at the same time, a little bit of me didn't want to lose it. Anyway, having done it, I'm quite glad.
It is so fascinating, this relationship we build with, this swath of rock. And I've never had anything like that. But in my life, when I have projected, let's say, a hard sport climb, I certainly built a relationship with the route, but I did not quite have that mental game. I'm still working on it, where one builds like this loving relationship. And one is, so I would look forward to my attempts on that route. Like, I'm just talking about some project in the past. And I would love like the part where one is piecing things together, when one is finding progress little by little. And that, to me, that is the richest part of that whole puzzle. But then one is coming closer to sending it, and one is, one hanging it or falling off at the top or whatever. So that part becomes anxiety and stress ridden. And this mental game is so complex. So how, maybe for the everyday person, how do you develop this kind of this process of trying really, really hard and wanting success, but also this bit of, also this kind of headspace where you're like, oh, I want this really bad, but I just love this so much that I almost don't want it to end. And I'm sensing that is maybe what ultimately allows you to succeed on something so So next level. So any clues as to how this mental game for the rest of us can be evolved?
Hey, I mean, I'm sure that's a huge subject that people could deep dive into. And in terms of, I mean, let's move away from that route just for a moment. More lately, when I've been trying routes, I've almost been pleased to fall off because I can have another go. And there was a route I was trying in North Wales recently. And I fell off the last move a couple of times, and I obviously when I fell off, I was like, "Oh damn! Like, should have got that. Like, that's so disappointing." But then in the time that I got to lower off, in those 20 seconds it took me to get to the ground, I was like, "Okay, cool. I can still come here again. I could still come to this. I mean, I could still go anywhere, but there was a reason to go back. There was like a focus. It was something that I really wanted to go back, and I could try those moves again with proper conviction. Obviously I can do the route 2 times, but it's that one time, the first time, which is really what it's all about. So yeah, I think if you can think about it like that, then, I mean, ultimately, you've chosen a route, you really like it, you're really enjoying it. So why be so stressed when you don't quite do it? Because all that's going to happen is you're going to move on to another one. So, I mean, all these routes that we do, we climb in all these amazing routes, and as soon as we do a route, we tend to move on to the next route. We kind of feel that's a bit odd, really. I mean, it's not like when you listen to a piece of music, you go, "Oh, that was a good piece of music, I'll not listen to it again." You'll, of course, listen to it lots of times. So when we climb these amazing routes, why do we do them again? Why do we just move on to the next one straight away? So I suppose that's my mentality with climbing, is that if I'm really enjoying it, then if I don't send it on that day, then the good news is I get to try it again and enjoy the whole thing again with all those cool people in that great place, with that beautiful weather, all that stuff. It's just there again to enjoy. So don't rush it, and don't be disappointed if you don't do it, because you get to have another go.
I love it. I love it all. It's so amazing. I think myself and maybe a lot of other people have to still work on maybe resetting our approach a little bit, so that, yes, for sure, you get on a route, and let's say you choose a route because it inspires us in some way. But at some point that process shifts, where, that desire and love sometimes gets a little bit eroded and gets replaced by that sort of stress. But I think the more we can hang on to loving that route, or it could be anything else in life, I think, in fact, the more we will enjoy life per se, because we will look forward to those things with that much more enthusiasm. But then also maybe also kind of help us towards success, because I mean, if one is happier, one is more at ease with maybe those two dualities of success and failure.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I would add to that. I'm probably one of the relatively few climbers who have tried at their max to not have had any projects get away from me yet. As in, I've not invested heavily and come away without a tick. Now, I think that's pretty lucky, but I do know tons of climbers who've, really given their all to something. And then for whatever reason, either injury, old age, or perhaps they moved away, or it was the end of a trip or something, they came away what they would potentially call empty-handed, as it were. Now, I've not had anything actually get away from me yet. There's bound to be one at some point that I try and let's call it fail. But yeah, so far, just about managed everything I've really tried.
Thanks for that, Steve. I didn't mean to ask you about that, because yes, from what I can sense, you've accomplished a lot of things, but then you've also managed to complete most things you've set out to do. And is it because, sorry, and I don't mean to sound a little bit negative here. Do you think you have perhaps not raised the bar for yourself high enough, or that you have just been very astute about your abilities and how far you can push? Because, like, for example, Rainman, I mean, that was the hardest route in the UK, and I don't know how many repeats it's had, but I'm sure it's still one of the hardest routes in the world. So you are setting the bar really high, but for yourself, though, you think you have done that?
I mean, that's a good question. Yeah, have I just basically avoided trying properly hard? Have I just stuck within my comfort zone? I feel like I've got a reasonable awareness of what I can achieve, and maybe I don't like to set the bar too high. Maybe I don't like to take the risk that I won't succeed. And certainly these days, the routes that I choose, which are, longer than an on-site, I get really inspired when I feel like I can do it in a time frame that feels comfortable, and that might be 2, 3, 4, 5 days. I've not really got stuck into something which I can tell right from the off is like, wow, this is going to take me 30 days. I'm not sure I've even got that in me anymore to get involved with something that hard. But yeah, in the past, maybe when I just thought, this is going to be too hard, I'm not going to invest in this. Maybe I haven't put the bar as high as I could have placed it. I mean, people say, if you're not falling off, you're not trying hard enough. And you could also put the same thing to, if you haven't failed on a long-term project, you weren't trying hard enough. I feel as though I think I kind of did what I wanted to do. For me, it was never really about reaching the absolute total max of what I could achieve. And I fall into a category when I go abroad, nearly every time I go abroad, actually, where I'm thinking, oh, do you know what? It'd be nice to get involved in a really hard red point when I'm abroad. And I get there, and there's just so much good climbing. I just want to do it all. So I end up just going on sighting, and that's what I do. And that's what I've done for years now. I can't even think of any red point I did abroad that took more than a day or two at the most.
Steve, I have admired that about your approach to those kinds of trips. So I was lucky to have actually witnessed you climbing.
Wow.
I was at the Petzl Rock trip at the Red River Gorge in 2008. And it still gives me goosebumps because we were at the Motherlode, and they had the finale day happening where all the pro athletes were climbing all of those mega bumpy classic lines of the Red. And one of those images that has stuck with me over the years has been, I believe you were trying to on-site Transworld Depravity, this 14A, and I remember I think you didn't actually succeed in the on-site, but you casually pulled off this bad hang.
Oh yeah.
Somewhere in the middle of the route. And I think basically all our faces dropped as we watched you execute that. So it sounds like, the style of the Red and some of the other places has suited you and has allowed you to, again, push the limits of on-site climbing as well. What is your anti-style, Steve? Because you talked about like choosing things, which have allowed you to really flex your wings. Is there like an anti-style that you actually have, a type of rock or a type of route?
So, I mean, if we think about indoor climbing just for a moment, my utter anti-style would be any kind of modern comp boulder problem. That's basically that's me out the window. I won't be able to do anything. But just thinking about like rock climbing, steep, powerful pockets would be probably my anti-style. So take me to Margalef on the big steep wall there, and I'll just won't perform very well at all. I like to find technical ways to make a move as easy as I can. So if there's no real way, basically I'm not very strong physically, I'm definitely not very strong. So if it's really about strength with minimal levels of technique, I mean, that's probably the wrong wording. But if a high level of strength and finger strength is required, I probably won't do very well on that style. So take me to areas which are maybe not so steep, with multiple options for footholds, small handholds maybe, then I'm probably going to be able to find an efficient way for me to climb up it. And that's where I kind of excel, really.
Hello, friends. Just a quick break. This is not an ad. If you have been enjoying these conversations, I would love for you to subscribe to my newsletter. It is where I go deeper, sharing stories, reflections, and behind the scenes insights that don't always make it into the podcast. I write about what I'm learning from elite athletes and how to stay ageless in body and mind. If you have ever wanted a thoughtful, inspiring read that ties it all together, training, aging, mindset, and awe. You will love this. You can find the link in the show notes or just head to agelessathlete.co. Again, www.agelessathlete.co, that is, to sign up. And yeah, just a couple of emails a month, and you can unsubscribe anytime. Absolutely no spam ever. Okay, back to the show.
Those modern style dynamic climbs are basically nightmares for anybody who was born like in 1990 or before. They require a certain kind of movement and style. But it's interesting, like the style that you have excelled at. I think some people might call that the anti-style, right? So let's take another iconic route. You repeated Hubble,
Yeah.
right? And so obviously, I don't think anybody listening to this podcast should assume that, Steve goes after, I don't know, quote unquote, softer routes. I mean, you have sent some of the hardest routes, which have been tried by many, many climbers. And so you think with modern training methods, some of those routes should be easier to approach now? Because I feel like they still don't get that many ascents.
No.
So,
No.
yeah. And what has allowed those routes to retain their mystique? So people are training in all kinds of ways. You have access to all kinds of information, gyms, facilities, but you still don't see that many people being successful.
Okay, that's a really big question. I feel like, and it's probably this is just my opinion. I feel like there's potential that a lot of people are maybe doing quite a bit of watered down training. At the end of the day, if you've got a target in mind, I mean, let's think of a route like something like Hubble. It's really bouldery. It's really intense. It requires strong fingers. Requires a little bit of fast movement of your hands, but there's no dynos in there, and there's no like big volumes in there. You don't need to be able to do the iron cross on the rings. You don't need to be able to do loads of stuff like that. You just need to be able to perform on rock to a high level. And if you go back to like the 90s, mid 80s, 90s, the sort of climbing training that the guys were doing then, people like Ben Moon and Jay Moffat, was so specific to that kind of climbing. And now, obviously, there's so many different types of climbing. There's indoor climbing, there's parkour style, boulder problems. So people are devoting a lot of time training for that kind of climbing. Now, obviously, that's going to work for that kind of stuff as well. It's less time training for that real sort of brutal, hard, intense rock climbing stuff. So, I mean, it's kind of not rocket science, really. People like Ben Moon, a long time ago, he was absolutely ranking. And yes, standards have increased. But yeah, like you say, have they increased that much? I don't know. I mean, it's not like people are doing Hubble every other day. It's still hard.
One of the things that I've loved hearing you talk about is sort of this continuum that fuels climbing performance. The trifecta of, let's say, uh, strength, technique, and perhaps maybe desire. And actually, I'll let you talk about that. But what I want to ask you is it seems like modern training methods seem to overemphasize strength training or off-the-wall training for actually being out there and climbing. Can you talk about if modern training methods are leaving things on the table, despite all of the advancement in science that's going into climbing today, as compared to, again, when you and your era of climbers were out there crushing and pushing limits?
I'm not the expert in top training and advancements in climbing performance, but one of the things that I will certainly feel for myself, and I do see it in a lot of other climbers as well, is the kind of three pillars of climbing, the three sort of cornerstones, which in my view are physical strengths, techniques, and there is your mental game. So those three things really sort of add up to make you as a climber. And those three things can vary considerably for an individual climber, and they certainly vary considerably between different climbers. So there's climbers who are super, super strong, but they just get really gripped, get really scared. And there's climbers who are technically brilliant and they really go for it, but they're really weak. So you can have all kinds of permutations of those three things. And the way that I see it is that if you think, right, I want to really perform on rock, I'm going to train physically like mad. I'm going to devote all my time to training physically and get right on top of the game. Then yeah, for sure, you might get amazingly strong, but when you go outside, can your head handle it? Are you motivated to go for it? Do you get scared? Is your technique up to scratch because you've been training indoors for a year? Probably not. Or vice versa, you might just climb outside continuously. You might be totally in the zone, technique really on point, really motivated, head in gear, but physically you might be a bit low down in the physical side of things. So what is really important is to try and, first of all, consider where is your weak link. And think that a lot of climbers these days, they don't actually do that. And the easy fix to improving their performance is to get stronger, because that is the easier way to do it. And certainly, location for a lot of people is an issue. You might be living in the city, haven't got access to outdoor climbing. So, right, what can I do to get better? I'll get stronger. And unfortunately, you climb outside on rock. It's complicated stuff. You need a lot of techniques in the toolbox to get up a piece of rock, and that can be frustrating for a lot of people. So yeah, you've got to be open and honest with yourself to work out your weak link. And the thing for myself, I often find is that I think my head is pretty good. I think my technique is pretty good. And when I've been climbing outside for quite a lot, I feel like I'm running those two things to the max. They're sort of like as good as they can be. So if I've got if my 33% capability in head is running at max, and my 33% of technique is running at max, that leaves 33% physical. Now, if I drop the bar a little bit there, if I lose a bit, I haven't actually lost that much overall. So I notice that if my physical strength drops down a bit, I can still be climbing pretty much to my max, even though I'm a little bit weaker than before. But then on the flip side, if I spend all winter training indoors because it's rubbish weather in the UK, and I feel pretty strong, when I go back outside, I feel like my head game is not on it and my technique's on it, and I'm climbing way worse. So I'm stronger, but I'm climbing rubbish. It's a complicated mathematical equation to add it all. Different for everybody probably, but that's the way I see it.
It is a very complex sport. And I love what you said about identifying one's weakest link that is inhibiting, let's say, progress. And I feel like often the easy answer is, hey, you are failing because you don't have finger strength or some other kind of strength that you can just go and build a workout program around. And I actually had somebody look at my climbing recently. I was actually on one of those boards. And one of the things they pointed out was that it wasn't really, I was failing to execute a certain move, not because maybe my fingers were not strong enough, but because I did not have core tension. Like my feet were skidding off and I couldn't hold that. So I think the point is that it's identifying what that weak link could be. Because one can always say, oh yeah, I'm just a weak climber. That's like an easy apology. It doesn't make sense. But really being very focused on finding those little bits of weakness and methodically working on them. And the other part you said, which also makes sense, is yes, one can work on one end of that spectrum or those three pillars and come out really strong and bursting from like a season of gym training and, flail on the rock. Because again, that's become the weak lane because you have forgotten that technique. You've forgotten the mental game of what it takes to try hard and be creative. So yeah.
Pretty much.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah. No, thanks for sharing all that.
I think it's just important to remember that rock climbing it's a complicated sport. It's a technical sport, and it does require a strong head game as well. Those things are crucial. It's not just physical. And the temptation is to go all in with just getting stronger, thinking that is ultimately the answer, and it's not. And that's that.
It's not.
That's the beauty of rock climbing, is it's such a multi sport in so many areas. And certainly, if it was all about strength, I'd just be rubbish. He wouldn't be talking to me now. He'd be talking to somebody else.
No, for sure. I mean, there's always that debate, right? Is rock climbing a sport or is it a lifestyle? And I think, well, depends who you ask, when you ask them. I guess it's a bit of both, perhaps.
Yeah.
Steve, moving on a little bit, wanted to dive a little bit deeper into training. I think you have been a self-coach climber for the most part for a long time. Please correct me. But recently, I believe you joined Lattice Training. So, what prompted that decision? And how have the results been?
Okay, so interesting. So, first part of that. So, yes, I'm 100% self-coached. I've never really done very much training. It's got to be said. The way I see training is you actively do something with the focus to work on your weaknesses and increase your physical strength. Well, it could be other strengths, I suppose, but I see training as that. Now, I've never really gone down that road too much, and very much when I go to a climbing wall, I see it as when I go to the cliff. So I turn up there and I want to do some climbing. My target is not to come away stronger. And as a result, often my sessions are all over the place. I'll turn up thinking, right, I have a bouldering session today, and it turns into a route session. Or I'm a bouldering session and it turns into me, actually, I'm just going to mess around my mates. And I've not really followed much structure. And I think the key to training is really to have a plan and have some kind of a continuous nature of doing the same stuff in order to make the gains. Because you can't do a bouldering session and a route session and then whatever and hope it's going to actually have some positive effect. It's just not going to happen. I think I've been pretty lucky in that probably been blessed with some level of physical strengths and been climbing for a long time that have carried me through. But I'm also quite sure that I can make some gains, and certainly probably could have made better gains in the past. I'm certainly not bitter about that. I'm more than happy with the way things have panned out. However, I did join up with Lattice relatively recently. They got in touch to see if I wanted to be part of their ambassador scheme. I think, to be honest, I was potentially useful to them because I'm an old person and they didn't really have any old people on their books. They've just got a load of like young crushers that are out there smashing it. So it's probably quite useful for their older followers at Lattice to say, okay, we've got this old guy on here as well. What's he
Hands
doing?
up.
That's right. Because certainly for me, if I saw like how Lattice were working with like say Aidan Roberts and the kind of training he's doing, I'm like, well, that's just way too hard for me. Like I can't relate to that. I need to think about what somebody older's doing. I think that's why they were keen to work with me. So far, to be fair, we've not done that much, and we were never going to do that much in this initial period. A few reasons. First of all, it was still up until recently very much the outdoor season, and my focus is always going to be outdoors. So any kind of training plan was just going to collapse straight away. If the guy said we want you to do this Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'd get back to them and say, well, Monday didn't work, so I was outside climbing. Tuesday I was route setting. Wednesday I was too tired. Thursday I was route setting again. Friday I was out climbing. So all that training plan just fell to pieces.
And on the weekends you were out bicycling, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure. That's it. Or I was out partying or climbing easy routes with my kids. Yeah, it was never going to work. However, there was a few things which we did start off doing, which I think made a little bit of a difference. So they wanted me to work on my sort of the sort of power endurance, but the sort of like really intense power endurance. And that's something I know is crucial, like on-site climbing. And I've not really pushed that in any way. So I do that when I'm outside climbing. Occasionally I might do that when I'm indoor bouldering. But they said, right, let's just put a bit of effort into this. You've got a trip coming up to Italy soon. So we're not going to try and get you stronger. There's not enough time for that, but let's just work on just doing what we were doing actually was doing 8 pretty long, pretty hard problems with a relatively short rest, like 2 or 3 minutes. Same problem over and over again. The sort of problem that I might be able to do on site, kind of borderline, like 14 move problems. They might take like 35 seconds or something. I'd be doing them kind of on the 3 minutes. So I wouldn't be getting really pumped, but I'd be powering out. And so I did that. To be fair, I didn't do loads of it. I probably did about 6 sessions of that. And when I was away in Italy recently, I didn't climb anything harder than I've climbed before. So I wasn't stronger, but I did climb 8 days in a row. And it was like multiple 8As, 8Bs, every single day. On-siting
wow.
to 8B, flashed 8B. That's pretty hard, really. And I just thought, hey, I don't usually even think that I'll climb 8 days in a row. Like, that's quite a lot of days on. The last day I was trying 8Bs on site. And I think that made a little bit of a difference. So that's working. But the thing which I really want to work on now, and it's something which I identified as a weakness in my climbing for quite a few years, is my complete lack of half crimp strength, which is just really quite rubbish. And I had a really good example when I was out in Italy recently, where I tried 2 different routes that were next door to each other. One was 8B, and one was 8A. I flashed the 8B. It was pretty long. It was quite a power endurance-y kind of route with a lot of recovery involved as well. And the predominant grip position was a kind of open-handed drag, efficient grip for that kind of style. The 8A around the corner was much more intense, and it really required you to get involved with some half crimp / crimp positions in order to do these hard moves. It was sandstone, so you couldn't rely on friction, and I just got my arse handed to me completely. And that's 8A. I mean, I'm on site probably, 8 out of 10 8As, I'll get them. And that one just slapped me. I red pointed it, but I had to try flipping hard. And it was obviously because of my weakness in the engaged grip position. But I've got to change that. I've got to sort of work on that. So that's what we're going to do with Lattice over the next couple of months. Stop messing around, get strong.
Sure. Well, I always thought, Steve, that power endurance was one of your marquee strengths. And it seemed like even with that, there was perhaps room for improvement. Maybe over the years, as you've gotten older, maybe that was one area that had perhaps declined. And kudos to Lattice and obviously yourself on maybe identifying that and then spending the effort and the energy in the gym sessions and going through that structured program. Because I think some of us struggle with that. Perhaps maybe that generation of climbers who started climbing outside before they started going to indoor gyms. I sometimes find that I don't have the patience and the psyche to invest in a periodized training program, where I should focus on going to the gym when conditions are perfect outside. And not just for climbing, it could be for surfing or a different sport. But sounds like you have made this decision to invest. And I think the rest of us are also excited because hopefully, Lattice will learn from working with some of their newer ambassadors like yourself and start building maybe training programs which are not just amazing for, let's say, monsters in their 20s, but also some of us aspiring middle-agers. I actually did take Lattice's coaching a couple of years ago, and I'm excited to kind of go back and see what kind of refinements and what kind of new data they have collected in their repository that informed how they will, again, coach the more seasoned climbers. Talk us a little bit also about how your own training when it comes to some of these other off-the-wall adaptations have evolved, Steve. So have you adjusted for, let's say, either compensating or avoiding injuries? And then also maintaining strength and flexibility over the years. I remember hearing you talk about how, it was becoming harder to just get out of bed and just crank out a bunch of pull-ups, right? So
no way. That, it blows me away. Like I can, wake up in the morning and my 12-year-old can jump out of bed and just bang out 10 pull-ups. I can barely hang on the bar. That's totally useless. Whereas gradually I'll start to come to life, and then eventually I'll be able to beat him at pull-ups if I really want to. But yeah, it takes a while to get going these days, for sure. I think off-the-wall training for the older climber or the older sports person is probably a useful thing to do, because those big muscle groups, they tend to sort of not really get as taxed as what they maybe used to. So just going climbing for an older climber is just kind of not hard enough. It's not hard enough to keep that muscle built anymore. So it just kind of like drops off you. So I certainly find when I'm working with climbers, because I do quite a lot of coaching, if I'm working with a climber who maybe they're 50 years old, and I look at what they do, and they're telling me, like I'm losing my performance, I'm losing my edge. Okay, what do you do then? Well, I go to the climbing wall twice a week. I go with my mates. We climb a bunch of 7As. I get a bit pumped every now and again, but I seem to be getting weaker. It's like, right, okay, do you do anything else? No, I just do that. Like I have like 2 good sessions a week, but that's it. It's like, wow, it's just not hard enough. It's just not very hard. It might feel like you've had a good session, but at the end of the day, it's just not hard enough. You're going to have to spend not that long, maybe 15, 20 minutes at the end of a session, doing some proper hard, maybe some weights, some pull-ups, some proper stuff, which is going to get your muscles really going for it, get that sort of power level back up again. Because it's easy to think you've tried really hard, and maybe you have tried really hard. Have you really pushed your body that much? I think maybe not in most cases.
What are perhaps some of those exercises, let's say strength building exercises, those 20 minutes that you talk about at the end of the session? Yes, we are feeling sore, and every bit of it is asking for that nice meal and maybe a cold beer. But what are maybe some of those most effective exercises, Steve, for exactly that kind of athlete, who's putting in a couple of sessions in the gym, doing a bit of bouldering, a bit of route climbing? What are you doing for yourself and recommend it to others?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I think probably the most important thing is to keep it relatively simple. If you have yourself like a whole stack of different exercises, chances are you'll not follow through with them. So keep it relatively simple. Keep it down to 5 or 6 separate exercises that you feel are relevant to climbing. And certainly in the past, I've actually looked at what does rock climbing involve? What muscle groups are needed, and I've kind of based my exercise around that. So let's just talk about like the things that I might do or I might prescribe to people that I'm working with. And the really basic, simple ones would be, I do something called low rows. I think they're really useful, which is basically they're hanging from the rings, feet on the ground, like your heels on the ground. So it's almost like doing the reverse of a press up. So imagine being in a press up position, hanging from the rings.
Yeah.
And just basically pull yourself up so that your wrists are like, and try and get it quite deep as well. So your wrists are level with your sort of nipples, really sort of pull right up. I find that very useful for steep ground. Doing them slow and also doing them fast as well to get that sort of power level. That's really good. Very basic pull-ups have got to be useful on a small edge, 20 mil, maybe even less, 15 mil. Sets of whatever you can manage, 5 or 6, maybe 10. Do five sets of 10 pull-ups. That's going to be very useful. I find shoulder shrugs for your shoulder engagement are also very useful. Planks and front levers with maybe one leg tucked on, they're useful as well. Leg raises hanging from the bar. All this kind of stuff is really very useful. But don't try and get too complicated with stuff. Press-ups are also good. I tend to do sets of press-ups with my hands in different positions. It could be relatively wide. It could be relatively narrow. I mean, just doing that as a set of exercises is going to make some kind of difference. Also, flies as well. So on the rings, maybe knees on the ground, toes on the ground if you're stronger. Trying to do some flies for your chest. That's the sort of like major muscle groups. But then there's a lot of stuff that can be done with the smaller muscle groups. And indeed, some of the things I've been doing with lattice recently have involved not so hard, not so higher weights, more working on the small muscles of the back, just to try and create stability for the shoulders. So I'm doing a bunch of stuff with those as well. But yeah, I think what the key is to have a bunch of exercises, 5 or 6 that you can do with the facility that you've got, and you're motivated to do them. They're not going to take very long, because if you've got 20 and it's going to take an hour, yeah, for sure you want to be it. Forget it. Not going to do any of them. Whereas if you know it's going to take 15, 20 minutes, what excuse have I got? 20 minutes, to be honest. I should be able to do this in my life. Off you go and do them, and you'll walk out thinking, wow, yep, I really worked out there. I feel really good. I had a proper climbing session and I had a bit of a workout. It's going to make a difference, and it will make a difference.
Brilliant, Steve. One thing I noticed right away about this program is that it doesn't require fancy equipment.
No.
As long as one has access to, cables to hang from, to do some of those scapular rows stuff. And then maybe just a couple of light weights. And then also, press ups, again, doesn't require anything. This program, I think you're talking about doing them right after the climbing session. And again, one thing I want to ask you is, when I was younger, I could climb hard one day and I could lift weights the next day and then climb again the next day, right? But this new school of training seems to indicate that one should stack up like this climbing training plus let's say strength training, and then take entire days off before the next training or climbing day. Are you also doing something like that where you have, like, let's say, a really big day where you have climbing and strength training combined, and then taking a full day off to be completely refreshed for the next session?
I mean, that is a good question. The way that my life runs is on a kind of busy schedule. I think, to be honest, the most important thing that anybody can do is to identify what they think they should be doing in a given week, and then fit it in around what their life demands are. So for myself, and this isn't necessarily the best way of doing it, for myself, I tend to do a climbing session indoors, which could be just purely for fun, followed by some strength training afterwards, maybe even a little bit of fingerboarding if I'm motivated. And the reason why I do that in the same day is because the next day I'm probably route setting. And the next day after that, I'm probably route setting. And the day after that, I'm climbing and training again. And the day after that, I'm doing some family stuff. And then after that, I'm away for the weekend with the family. And then I'm back to route setting. And then I've got another day's route setting. You've got to fit it in around your life. And I think that's the most crucial thing of all is look at what your life is and how you can carve out time slots. Don't try and look to what other people do. If it doesn't fit in with your life, you just won't be able to do it. That's the real problem that people have with coaching plans, is they get a coaching plan and the first thing they think is, I can't fit that in my life. I'm not even going to start. You've got to fit it in. And there's going to be an optimum for each individual person, but it's unlikely that many of us will find the optimum training regime, because we have a life to live as well. We have jobs, we've got kids, we've got families, and we've got stuff to do. It's a matter of not finding the optimum, but finding what fits in.
Absolutely. And I like what you said. You talk about maybe chunking down the training plan and, let's say, weekly kind of increments, because every week can be different for, let's say, the busy adult. One of the things I struggled with the lattice plan is there was just a lot of volume.
Yeah.
And I was also injured. So I had two things going on. I was a little injured and I had difficulty doing certain things. And secondly, I feel like I almost lacked psych. So I knew that I wanted to be fitter and I knew that I wanted to be a stronger climber, but I wasn't able to execute everything properly because somehow I didn't have like a huge goal. So talk to us about, see, how important is it to have this some kind of North Star, some big goal that can drive, let's say, climbing training? Because sometimes, you come to this point in your life where you may not have a big goal, but part of me still wants to be ready and fit for that trip or that goal when it arrives.
I mean, a goal, people talk about a goal being the most important thing in order to, knuckle down and get some hard work done. I think maybe it is, but that goal can vary enormously. Some people don't seem to have any goal at all. You look at them and go, wow, like, you don't even climb outside. Like, why, what are you training for? I don't even know what you're training for. But they're super psyched. They're absolutely motivated. But their goal, they have some personal goal, which is to, get stronger fingers, to reach a personal best. And their goal may be stronger to them than my goal might be. I might have a goal to climb a 9A in my local area. That might seem like wow, that's a proper goal. Like, you've got a real target. You must be really motivated. I might not be. Finding what motivates you is the key to it, really. And you don't necessarily have to have a specific goal. You've just got to be enjoying what you're doing and getting something out of it. That's the goal we look for. So at the moment, I don't have any specific route or even a specific trip that I'm working towards. But I'm motivated because my finger strength is weak in the half crimp, and I've got this goal to try and increase it. And I'm really psyched that it'll make a difference. In fact, I'm more psyched to increase that than I am to climb some 9A plus somewhere.
Sure. I wanted to ask you about this. So, you've always been a well-rounded climber, but, again, with getting older, you've found opportunities to work on maybe even some strengths you had, which may have, let's say, diminished over the years. Can you talk to us a little bit about that specific thing where, let's say, now you're doing strength training and you're working, let's say, on your half strength strength. So are there any specific things you've also found older climbers where they have now started struggling with some specific areas? It could be flexibility, it could be core strength, it could be, let's say, shoulder stability, a few of those areas.
Well, I mean, I'd say probably all of them. They all drop off a little bit as we get older. I do see that a lot of climbers in their older years, they do struggle with the real brutal crimp. It's not surprising, really. It's not good for your fingers to be pulling really hard on some like 10 mil nasty little crimp. That's something which was the power and the fast movement definitely seems to tail off. People become a lot more static and a lot more slower moving. And I think a lot of climbers start relying more on recovery as opposed to having the strength to get moves. So, I mean, I'm a classic example of this. I will really rely heavily these days on my recovery. So I'll struggle through a move and then I'll rely on getting my recovery back to struggle through the next move. Whereas I'll climb with younger climbers who seem to be able to do the moves really quite easily, but then they might have less recovery. So they've got to go straight into the next move. I mean, we evolve, don't we, for whatever we've got going on or whatever's thrown at us. The key is to not just do what we're doing, but to look at what our potential weaknesses are and maybe give that a little bit of thought as well.
And when you say like recovery, you're talking about like the mid route or the mid sequence shakeout, when you're trying to get that lactic acid back down and you find that
I'd say right now
it's interesting because
probably my strongest point in climbing is my recovery at some kind of rest. I think I've got really good recovery. I'm not sure about any of my assets, but that's the one thing that seems to carry me massively. If there's nowhere to recover, I'll fall off.
It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, one thing that I was always told I was good at was being able to recover, on steep routes. But I sometimes think that I tend to over rely on that.
Yeah.
Where, I could stay at a rest for almost too long. Where like the meter starts going down, after a point where you're like not really recovering.
Well, you've got to know where that's a balance point, isn't it? You got to know like when should I go? Right. Okay. I've got to go. Ow. That's a skill to be able to observe where that point is.
Last thing on the training conversation is about diet. We talked about, your breakfast early in the conversation. I also think that generally climbers tend to overlook, diet and its role in performance. How do you approach nutrition now, as your habits have changed, as your demands have also changed?
So, I mean, I'm not the prime example of somebody who follows a particularly athlete's diet, to be honest. I eat kind of what I want, really. I'll eat pizzas, I'll eat pies, I'll eat chips, I'll eat cheese sandwiches, I'll eat chocolate biscuits, I'll eat cakes. But at the same time, I eat a lot of vegetables. I eat fruit. I like the whole lot. I don't really try very hard, or in fact, I don't try at all to follow a proper athlete's diet. But I am aware that I do like healthy food as well, so I will eat that too. But I'm lucky in that I certainly don't struggle from weight. I mean, like just example, yesterday I did like 9 hours of route setting, with probably about 10 miles of cycling to get to and from work. I was out the house 15 hours. I'll do the same again tomorrow. Today I've cycled to do some work at someone's house, and I cycled into town to do some shopping, and I cycled to the climbing wall, did a couple of hours climbing at the climbing wall, and then cycled back for this. So I'm pretty active. Now, I do think that I could probably squeak out a tiny bit of performance if I really went for it with the diet. I think I probably could, but I feel like the gains would be relatively minimal, and I just like eating food. I like to eat what I like, and I'm just not motivated to squeeze out that extra 1% by really going down the diet. I'm lucky. I'm skinny. I'm light. I do stacks of exercise. I've never had a weight problem. I've weighed 56 kilos for basically since I was 17. It just doesn't change. I mean, I think if I sat around all my life, I'd probably be a big fat blob. But until that happens, I'll not worry about it.
Well, Steve, I mean, your energy output is otherworldly, because on your quote unquote rest days, you are out there setting problems. The setters crew that I see most often in the gyms around the Bay Area, they're often a lot younger. And route setting is such a physically demanding exercise that you are doing that, and you're doing back-to-back like climbing days. Is there like some kind of, I don't know, is it just genetics that you're able to
maybe
continue? Yeah. But I think most of us, if we had anything close to your kind of volume, I think we would be maybe risking injury, perhaps.
I mean, maybe I am. I don't know. I mean, I've been doing it a long time now. I've been setting forever.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes the setting is, yesterday's work was brutal. I was working in a sort of 30-degree overhanging roof, setting quite a lot of routes. And this morning I was pretty tired from that, but I still had a decent bouldering session down the climbing wall today. Don't know. I mean, I think I'm conditioned to do it. We do condition ourselves, and you get used to it. I remember a couple of years ago I went for just a 5K run with my kids, and then the next day I did a 5K run with my partner. I'm not a runner. And then the day after that, I couldn't walk. I literally couldn't flipping walk. Absolutely destroyed. It took me 3 days before I could walk down the stairs.
No, that is such a good point about we can condition ourselves to continue performing in those specific activities. I have been recovering from this really annoying ankle injury for a couple of years now, and I find that sometimes even taking my dog for a walk for a few blocks is painful.
Oh man!
But then if I go climbing, I can keep climbing. So sometimes people are puzzled. They're like, "Well, you were complaining about avoiding approaches or avoiding like some lower body activities, but you don't seem to be hampered. Are you making excuses?" I'm like, I can't explain it. Like, I am conditioned to be able to, hang on to jogs on steep walls. I can keep doing that for a long time. Any injuries, Steve? You've been, again, performing climbing for such a long time. I'm just wondering if you are really, if there are any such things that you've learned to kind of manage, because as you get older, many of us we have to learn to like manage some things which may never heal. In my case, I have bad shoulders. I just have to learn to work around them.
I mean, that's a funny one, isn't it? Because I remember when I was younger, I remember getting injuries more recently where you think, oh, this is actually not going to go away, this one. Or it might not go away. Whereas in the past, you get an injury, you just think, oh, that's a pain in the backside. But it'll go away eventually. But then, as you get older, they don't tend to go away. At the moment, I got a bad foot, which is from a car accident, actually. It wasn't even from climbing. I got run over. But it's not so bad. It actually hurts more when I'm walking around in a pair of approach shoes. In a climbing shoe, it doesn't hurt that much. It's lucky. I've got twingy shoulders. I've had twingy shoulders for a long time now, and I do feel as though that's probably partly my own fault for not really working the shoulder stability and shoulder strength. I've kind of neglected that by just going climbing outside for way too long. I should have tried harder. What else have I got wrong? That's kind of about it at the moment. I think I'm relatively injury free, just slightly tweaky shoulders, but they're not stopping me. I'm just aware that I can't push them too hard, and I should be a bit more educated and sort that out.
Yeah. Well, knock on wood. Hopefully it stays that way, and you can continue taking care of those things. Steve, nearing the end of our conversation, a couple of other things I wanted to ask you. One is, obviously, I'm sure many people will also be curious. Any goals that you are sight on these days?
As in like specific routes?
It could be specific routes. It could also be specific trips. I mean, you talked about, the half grip being, strengthening that being certainly, but I'm guessing that will allow you to ultimately achieve maybe some things. It could even be a big one somewhere.
Yeah. So, I mean, to be fair, there's not really any specific routes that I'm really motivated to do. Like, there's not one route that I want to go and try and do. In terms of like targets, I would like to climb another 9A. I've not climbed 9A for a while. I've climbed 8C plus recently, but it'd be good to climb a 9A again. I kind of had that sort of weird thought a few years ago. It was like, wow, I've not climbed 9A for a while. Is that it? Will I never climb it again? And it's like, I'd like to get involved. So that's one thing. I'm also really motivated by the traditional style of climbing. I actually love the trad style, both on site and also the sort of red point style, where you find a route and you've got to attack it like a sport route, but there's a whole different layer in terms of like protection and are you safe? Can you make it safe? Can you hang on to place the gear? There's quite a few British trad routes that I've not done yet that I'm really motivated by, and that's kind of like what I'm psyched for at the moment. But just kind of, I'm very motivated to just keep on getting out there. That's my main target. I don't seem to need a specific route. In fact, I think I thrive on just knowing that I can just get out there and climb hard. And this whole kind of like age thing, obviously that's why we're here. That's the whole point of it. It does sometimes kind of blow me away when I'm trying something and I'm still trying. And I know I'm trying just as hard as I was when I was 25. I'm still pulling off moves that I could do when I was 25. And I have this sort of thought where I think, how is this even working? Like, how you still manage to do this? And I guess at some point you'd be like, oh, you can't do it anymore. But until then, I'm just going to carry on and enjoy it.
For sure, Steve. And, just a bit more broadly, any non-climbing goals also that you're psyched on? I'm not sure if there's another book in you or there are some other like, larger life projects. Obviously, raising amazing kids is part of your lifestyle. Any other things we can learn about what's keeping you grounded and motivated?
Yes. I mean, it's not like I've got these specific goals that are non-climbing related. I do really enjoy working in the climbing stroke outdoor industry though. And as the years have gone by, I used to get some sponsorship over the years. It was never a huge amount of money, certainly not enough to live on, but they have dropped off in recent years. But I'm still really heavily involved with the outdoor industry. So I do a lot of route setting, I do a lot of coaching, I'm involved with the British Mountaineering Council, I work a lot with Petzl. All these guys, I just love working with them and, doing talks, setting up coaching plans, helping to develop new gear. It's just great. It's just great to be part of the industry. And I kind of see myself as being kind of in this game for a long time. And I love the way it's changing over the years. I love the way that it's not just about performance and big numbers and ticking hard routes. Now it might be about preparing a talk to give to 300 or 400 people, or it could be about coaching some local club and really trying to get the best for them, or it could be about developing some new piece of kit and testing it. There's so many things that climbing has given to me, and still being involved in so many levels is a real gift, really. I don't see that just stopping, just like that. I see that I've got a lot of years left in the bank, and long may it continue.
I love that, Steve. And you're completely right. Like, it is so much bigger than just a day at the crag. It allows us to manifest parts of our personality and our gifts in bigger ways. Like, you with your writing and your setting and your speaking, and you've provided so much inspiration. I find that myself, like with this little podcast, this is another way that I can really lean into talking about your role in the British community of climbing and otherwise. First of all, well, congratulations on your performance. Britain's performance in the Olympics.
Oh, yeah,
that
it's
was
amazing.
a sight,
really good, wasn't it?
Sight to behold. Absolutely amazing how well the team did. Were you involved, or are you involved with coaching sort of that next generation of crushers?
No, no, not at all. No, I mean, to be fair, I'm not the man to do that at all. The style of climbing these days and the training involved climbing is not what I'm familiar with. I wouldn't be well placed for that. I mean, I know the guys pretty well, particularly Toby. Toby was on the Petzl team many years ago. We got him on when he was like 9 years old, and I know him pretty well. But he's. I mean, I would like to say actually the chalk bag. I think the chalk bag that he used is my chalk bag. he really liked the Petzl orange chalk bag, and I think he'd lost his, so I had an orange chalk bag, and I cycled down to the climbing wall and gave it to him. So I'll take off.
Also, the chalk bag he actually used on
winning. I can't remember if he was definitely using it, but he certainly used that orange chalk bag a lot. And I'd like to think that it's all down to the chalk bag and the fact that it was mine, but
well, he's not. Yeah, with that kind of performance, he's not giving it back to you. Now that's his lucky chalk bag now,
and I'm more than happy about that. But no, in terms of my involvement in that type of climbing, no, I'm not the guy for that. I watch in total amazement, and I think back to the days when I used to enter competitions, and wow, it's come along a bit, hasn't it?
Amazing, Steve. For climbers listening who have admired you over the years, what's one thing about you, Steve, that they may not know, and that may surprise them?
Ooh, wow, that's an interesting question. I suppose one thing that often surprises people is the fact that the majority of my life is not all about climbing. So the majority of my friends that I spend time with are not climbers, and we don't talk about climbing at all.
Wow,
it's not relevant to to my social life in most cases. So yeah, most of my life is not anything to do with climbing. But I think that's probably a good thing for me, because it means that I never get bored of it. I don't get bored talking about it, because I don't talk about it very often. In fact, to be honest, I quite like talking about it with climbers, because I don't get to talk about it very much. So I think people are usually quite surprised when they find that most of my life is not revolving around climbing. Actually, I find that quite interesting myself, because I'm so psyched on it.
Sure. And well, I will say personally that I was pleasantly
as well. People are usually quite surprised when they see how much I eat. They're like, really?
Yeah.
Like, why are you such a skinny matchstick when you've just eaten like a family-sized pizza?
Well, if they knew, the full extent of your physical output, maybe they may not be shocked. Well, one thing I was pleasantly surprised myself, again, harking back to that Red River Gorge trip 16 years ago was I remember, they would, right after the climbing ended, they would have those parties. They would have a DJ, maybe Sid Bill Hodge or somebody else would be spinning, and I would have assumed that, the pros like you out there would have crashed a little bit earlier to be ready to perform the next day. But I remember one distinct night, and I think it was past midnight, and I look over my shoulder and I see you, you're dancing away, right next to me, completely immersed in the music. And I was like, wow, this is amazing because I was like, that's the kind of climber I want to be, where I can still go and, climb well and enjoy, but then also be able to enjoy all those other aspects of that's life.
I mean, just so I was out at a big party on Friday night just gone, and I went to bed at about 8:00. So,
Folly.
proper party, that one.
Well, one does not need to be a hermit to find one's limits. I totally love that, Steve.
That was beyond limits.
Beyond limits in all kinds of ways. It's climbing has been, again, it's still been such a defining part of your life. Okay, so if you had to distill your philosophy of climbing into one sentence.
Oh, philosophy of climbing to one sentence. It would be get out there and enjoy it. That would be, because that's pretty much the way that I rule my entire life, is getting out there and enjoying it. That's pretty much it. There's nothing really more to add.
That's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Ageless Athlete Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this show just as much as I enjoyed creating and producing it. Whether you are an athlete looking to push your limits or someone striving to maintain a healthy, active lifestyle as you age, there is always something new to learn. From Ageless Athlete, we bring you a fresh episode each and every week. If you liked what you heard, we would love it if you would take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an update. And if you really liked what you heard, please leave us a review, crush those 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. It helps us reach more people who are passionate about staying strong and resilient, no matter their age. Don't forget to visit our website and leave your email so I can send you occasional insights, stories, and tips to keep you inspired and motivated on your journey. You can also follow us on Instagram at Ageless Athlete Podcast and on YouTube at Ageless Athlete Podcast as well for even more great content. All of these links are available on the show notes for this episode. This show is entirely produced by me, Kush Khandelwal, based out of California with the help of my trusted adventure pup Roger. Until next time, keep challenging yourself. Keep pushing those limits. Stay mentally and physically fit. Continue doing what you love to do. And my friends, stay ageless.
Friends, this is not an ad. This is just a quick message to those amongst us who are listening to Ageless Athlete podcast for the first time. I would love it if you would hit subscribe and follow on your favorite podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcast or Spotify or Stitcher or Overcast or what have you. We bring you stories and routines and other inspiration from elites in the world of the best outdoor sports. In each episode, you will find how these athletes stay connected to the outdoors, maintain peak performance, and continue to thrive as they age. I encourage you to look through Brad episodes and listen to a couple and see if they resonate. And then, come back next week. We release an episode each week. And I am really inspired to bring you some of the best stories from the world of the outdoors. Okay, back to the show.